After 8 years of selling tofu, my husband passed the highest imperial examination. He was 34, and I was 29. I closed my workshop, but I refused to go with him. You've forgotten, my lord. I have already been pledged to another. Last year, during the Great Drought, I was sold for 20 taels of silver to pay for a block of ink, a gift for his beloved. Today was my last day selling tofu. The man who had bought me had given me 3 days to pack my things and leave Yu County. The hot tofu pulp, wrapped in coarse cloth, steamed before my eyes. I won't be making tofu anymore. A few months ago, the messenger had run through the streets of Yu County gongs and drums announcing that my husband had become an official. It was only natural that the tofu workshop would close. The messenger had even eaten several bowls of my tofu pudding. The fishmonger next door had offered me a fresh fish, strung on a grass rope. Take this as my congratulations. Mistress Shi, your hard work has finally paid off. The fish, just caught, flickered its tail, splashing water. My tofu was famous in Yu County. Fish and tofu stew had helped her sell a lot of fish. The tender tofu pudding, with a sprinkle of cane sugar, melted in your mouth. A comfort on a cold winter's day. Ethan loved it. I preferred spicy food, but he said it was unrefined. The sound of hooves. The villagers moved to the side. At the head of the procession, on a tall horse, was my husband. Now the Imperial Inspector Ethan, dressed in his official robes, his bearing dignified, a newfound maturity in his eyes. He was smiling. Behind him, a carriage. A lady emerged, her face like a silver plate, her eyes sparkling, her figure as slender as a willow branch. The people looked at her, then at me, a moment of silent sympathy. The comparison was stark. My clothes were drab, smelling of soybeans. My hands were calloused. I was a faded beauty. She was in the bloom of her youth. He extended a hand to help her from the carriage, as if she were made of glass. He truly cherished her. He never once glanced in my direction. They entered the largest restaurant in Yu County. I heard the roast goose. There was a specialty. The county magistrate was already waiting, fawning over them. I could hear them praising the woman. The lady is so elegant and graceful, a perfect match for the inspector. Not like that countrywoman. Everyone in Yu County knew our story. Ethan adjusted his sleeves, his brow furrowed, his voice cold. Watch your words. A chorus of yes, sir. I wiped down the tables, cleaning up. The fishmonger's wife, her face a mixture of embarrassment and anger, said, "They say scholars are heartless, and it seems to be true. After all you've done for him. And he comes back with a new young wife." She tried to comfort me. "At least your business is good. We can work together from now on." Others chimed in, their words less kind. "It is common for men to abandon their wives after they become successful. You shouldn't be angry, mister. You should try to win his favor. You might get something out of it." Their words were crude but not wrong. I looked at my hands, calloused and chapped. I just shook my head, saying nothing. The workshop was simple, but I had grown attached to the tools. Now that I was leaving, I felt a pang of sadness. I sold the shop for a good price. At dusk, I sat at a table by the street, ladled the last of the tofu pudding into a bowl, added some toppings, and savored the fragrant aroma. I had been selling tofu for 8 years, but it had never tasted so good. "Inspector Qian is busy with official duties and has sent us to escort you to the manor." A small sedan chair, a grand procession, stopped at the gate of my humble hut. The neighbors all craned their necks to see. Inspector Qian hasn't forgotten his first wife after all. He is not a heartless man. The man in front of me, a minor official, looked at me with a fake smile. It was clear I had no choice but to go. I took the urn and the memorial tablet from the altar. If I left, my mother-in-law would be left to the spiders and snakes, without even a proper meal. She had said she would haunt me even in death. I believed her. The December air was frigid, but the restaurant was warm. The servants were clearing the tables, so I had to wait outside. The thick, embroidered carpet. The scent of pine. Ethan sat in a grand chair reviewing documents. He smiled when he saw me. "You are here. You've worked hard all these years. I was so busy, I couldn't come for you sooner. I hope you are not angry. We hadn't seen each other in days, but it was as if no time had passed. The tea they served was fragrant. I placed my bundle on the table. He looked at it confused. What is this? My mother suffered her whole life. I was unfilial, and you've also suffered so much. You won't have to work so hard anymore. He took my hand, his eyes full of genuine gratitude. His lips trembled, but he couldn't form the words. I pulled my hand away, and now, without support, finally managed to speak. But, Olivia, I have already taken a wife in the capital. You must not cause trouble. Only then can we both have a good life. Otherwise. Seeing I wasn't responding, he changed the subject. Isabella is not used to the local climate. She wants to eat some tofu pudding. Olivia, you make the best in all of U County. Could you make a bowl for her? She is carrying my child, Olivia. You must be sensible. Do not be jealous. And just like that, I was accused of a crime I hadn't committed. I looked at him, a sense of helplessness washing over me. What a grand official you are. He flicked his sleeves and sat back down. A clear hierarchy established. He had brought me here for the sake of his reputation, and also to have a servant to wait on his new wife. Does my lord's precious child remember Luna and Leo? He looked down at his tea, silent. Luna and Leo were twins, round and adorable at their 1-month celebration. My mother-in-law had even made me chicken soup, a rare act of kindness, though most of it had ended up in his stomach. We were overjoyed as new parents. He had just passed the provincial examinations and was on his way to the capital. Luna, my playful, lovely daughter, had drowned. And Leo, at the age of 5, had fallen ill during an epidemic in U County. Just then, Ethan had sent word that he had been robbed and needed all our money. It still wasn't enough. A man returning from the capital had subtly suggested the practice of wife pawning. The Preston family, a wealthy local gentry, had been childless for years. They offered 20 taels for me to stay with them for 2 years. If I bore a son, I would be rewarded with gold, silver, and cloth. They were only interested in my womb. He had said he had no choice, that he had almost been killed by bandits. I had refused, but my mother-in-law, with the contract in hand, had dragged me to the Prestons. My son has been good to you. You've already cost me 2 grandchildren. You have the face of a harlot. The master of the Preston family has taken a liking to you. You should be happy. A child born from your lowly womb will have a better life. It is a blessing. If you don't go, I will kill myself right here in front of you. In a year of famine, she would take my rations to feed the magpies, believing it a good omen that her son would soon become the top scholar. In her eyes, I was worth less than a bird. The master of the Preston family was over 50. The women who had failed to bear him children had all been beaten to death and thrown onto the mass grave. The men who had gotten their silver without lifting a finger were all too willing. My mother-in-law had made a scene at their gate, her forehead bleeding. I had gritted my teeth and agreed. Wife pawning was not uncommon, but he was a scholar. He couldn't bear the shame. The contract was in my mother-in-law's hands. No wonder she was so brazen. A day as a couple, 100 days of grace. At that time, I truly believed he had no choice. Leo had not survived. His small body had grown cold in my arms. I could not collapse. I still had my mother-in-law and Ethan to support. At this thought, a wave of anger surged through me. As he was about to step forward, I slapped him twice across the face. He was caught off guard, looking at me in disbelief. Wuyan, you used to be so considerate and gentle. How have you become such a shrew? How can you come with me to the manor? It was my own damn fault for falling for you in the first place. My mother had arranged our marriage. He was handsome, a teacher in the village, and had a remarkably good temper. She thought he had a promising future. As long as I could remember, my mother had raised me alone. She was a cook, working for wealthy families. She was always surrounded by men, whom I despised. But he had always been there for me, gentle and polite, unlike the others. After my mother's death, I married him. In just a few years, had spent all my inheritance. I had to take up my mother's trade to make ends meet. I had done my duty to his family. Wu Yin, I have always been sincere with you. It is just the position of the main wife. Why must you insist? After years of toil, I had held on to a sliver of hope. Now, it was gone. Husband, she must be angry because I did not serve her tea. A gentle voice came from behind the curtain. A woman emerged, her steps delicate. She took a cup of tea from a maid and was about to bow to me, but I didn't move. Ethan had already rushed to her side, supporting her. My dear, you are so understanding, but you have misplaced your kindness. A vulgar woman like her is not worthy of your respect. I saw the playful glint in Isabella's eyes, her pregnant belly a glaring sight. She covered her nose and mouth, her brow furrowed. Everyone in Yu County knows that sister's tofu pudding is the best. Even the child in my womb is craving it. If sister is unwilling, my lord should not be so harsh. Seeing her so gentle and understanding, he was overcome with affection. He smashed the teacup on the floor and said angrily, "You've been selling tofu for decades. Why can't you make it today? If I don't get that bowl of tofu pudding, Olivia, you can forget about coming back with me." Isabella, feigning shock, collapsed into his arms. He still thought I just wanted to be by his side. A bowl of tofu pudding, 10 taels. He sighed in relief, a smile returning to his face. He said to her in a doting voice, "Isabella will have her tofu pudding tonight." Then he looked at me, puffed out his chest, and had a servant give me 10 taels of silver. He sat behind the curtain, his voice soft and gentle. "Olivia has been with me for many years. Without me, she has picked up the vulgar habit of chasing after money. All she knows is how to make tofu. In the end, it is all about the money. She won't disobey me." Her painted nails were clenched in her palm. The woman, placated, giggled, grinding the beans, filtering the pulp, boiling, and adding the coagulant. I knew the process by heart. By the time the tofu pudding had set, it was already the hour of the tiger. The servants didn't dare to disturb them. I ordered a fine meal for myself in the restaurant, eating with gusto. The roast goose was truly delicious. The tofu pudding, left to sit for too long, was now sour and bitter. Isabella's maid finally arrived, her words full of disdain. "This is so ordinary, and you call it good?" Before I could reply, she had knocked over the entire tray of tofu pudding. Ethan arrived, and the floor was a white mess. "My lord, this tofu pudding is inedible. She must have done it on purpose, out of resentment." I finished the last of my morning wine and met his gaze. "The goods have been delivered, and the payment has been made. You can't go back on your word." Before he could react, I started counting on my fingers. "Over the years, I've spent 100 taels on your education, another 100 for the tofu pudding, and you promised 100 for the wife pawning. I won't ask for my mother-in-law's funeral expenses. Just give me 300 taels." "Olivia, what are you talking about?" Then his voice turned shrill and distorted. "What, wife pawning? When did I ever say that? My mother said it was just 2 years of service." His brow was furrowed, his eyes were sunken and bruised, and his face was pale. "After travel expenses, Leo's funeral, and my mother-in-law's medicine, the remaining 95 taels were sent to him in installments. After my mother-in-law's death, I went to see him. It was the flower festival, a beautiful spring day. I saw him with Isabella, exchanging flirtatious glances and gifts. In a handkerchief embroidered with orchids was a block of ink. The most expensive ink on his desk was only 2 taels. I had asked at the shop, and this one was 20. The exact price the master of the Preston family had offered for me. Isabella, who had just arrived, overheard, her expression changing, her eyes full of contempt. How could I share a husband with such a woman? She is no better than a prostitute. My heart felt as if it had been stabbed with a steel knife. I almost collapsed. The women who returned from wife pawning, so many of them had died. So many that people forgot the names signed on the contracts. Ethan's face grew even darker. He was worried I would be a stain on his career. Isabella whispered something in his ear. His expression softened, and he looked at me with guilt. Olivia, I was wrong. I will make it up to you when we get back. Isabella didn't mean it. Once out of U County, I had only a few days to live, I replied coldly. My lord and lady need not worry. I will not be going with you. I am leaving. A carriage had arrived at the restaurant entrance. I saw it, and was about to get in. Ethan grabbed me, a hint of panic in his voice. Besides selling tofu, where else can you go? You've forgotten, my lord. I have already been pledged to another. My master has come for me. He was thunderstruck. After a long moment, a bitter smile appeared on his face. This game of playing hard to get is not new. You are my wife. I will pay back the silver. Don't be stubborn. He was delusional. My slap was too light. Isabella's pretty face was contorted in a grimace, her eyes burning with a desire to incinerate me. Sister, are you doing this to deliberately embarrass my lord? Or have you become addicted to selling yourself? A woman in her 30s, with no sense of shame. I didn't want to listen anymore. I broke free. Ethan took a deep breath and called me Mistress Qianxi. Have you thought this through? If you step out that door, you will no longer be a part of the Qian family. Olivia, you must think carefully. I had already reached the carriage. I turned and showed them the contract from my sleeve, and also a silver hairpin, simple and old-fashioned. He read it in a glance and then tore it to pieces. Times have changed. I do not recognize such things. A man who had been a nobody his whole life, now that he had climbed up, had become so despicable. The hairpin was a wedding gift. You don't want it? His breath was unsteady, as if he couldn't breathe. I had been a dutiful wife for 12 years, never once speaking a harsh word to him, cherishing his gifts like treasures. Now that I was leaving, I had to sever all ties. I am sure you have no use for it anymore. Keep it or throw it away, as you wish. And on the day of the flower festival, I went to the bamboo garden. Their eyes widened, their faces filled with embarrassment. A lantern hung from the carriage, with the character Zhao on it, swaying in the faint light. Ethan's hand, which had been grabbing me, froze. He muttered to himself, "How can this be? This is not the Preston family's carriage. Since you are here, let's go." A calm man's voice came from inside the carriage. The curtain was lifted, and a faint medicinal scent wafted out. His health was not good, Zhao family. The Maritime Trade Commissioner, Mr. Sterling. He was just passing through U County. At his words, Ethan fell to his knees. I did not know of your presence, my lord. I have been disrespectful. The voice from inside was flat. You should mind your own affairs. Inspector Qian. How can you govern a prefecture with such a corrupt private life? Olivia will now be under the protection of the Maritime Trade Commission. Yes. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. If a report were to be filed against him now, his career would be over. The carriage headed out of the city. I rode on horseback, looking at the distant mountains. Ethan helped Isabella to her feet. He watched the retreating carriage, a sense of emptiness in his heart. Since he was a child, he had always been around Olivia. His mother had told him that her family was not short of money. If he could win her favor, his life would be good. She was under her mother's care. She was more beautiful than any other girl in U County. He would often protect her when her mother was out. Gradually, he couldn't tell if he liked her or her money. Until she, in her wedding dress, became his wife, dedicating herself to him, bearing him 2 sons. He didn't know when, but he had stopped seeing her efforts. She was not as beautiful. In the capital, he had met Isabella, disguised as a man. At the academy, his heart was filled with a newfound passion. A woman like her, who could help him in his career, was far more valuable than an orphan like Olivia. He knew what was important. But now, her resolute departure left him with a strange feeling. Are you regretting it, my lord? She has found a better match. She won't be back. You should give up. Hearing her so blunt, a wave of annoyance washed over him. A servant came to report that there was still a pile of official business to attend to. He returned to the yamen, his spirits low. After leaving the city, the carriage stopped for a rest. I didn't dare to ask any questions. The man sat nearby, holding a strange wooden board. He had a gentle aura about him. I didn't know his official rank, but from Ethan's reaction, I knew he was a high-ranking official. He was also a scholar, but he lacked Ethan's arrogance. He just said softly, "There is no need to be formal. My wife will be here soon." He treated me with respect, which put me at ease. Half a day later, his wife and her entourage arrived. She greeted me with a bright smile. "Olivia, you are here. Here is the divorce decree. We can't let him ruin your reputation." I then realized she had gone to get the divorce decree for me. Once I left, and my mother-in-law was dead, Ethan would never admit to wife pawning and would blame it all on me. She also gave me a contract. I was stunned, a warmth spreading through my heart. "I am forever in your debt. The sea winds wait for no one. I had to come for you 2 days early," she said, changing the subject. Seeing my embarrassment, we traveled for a few days and entered the territory of Fuzhou. It was a world away from Yu County. The food was different too. The winter was warm and the fruits were more abundant. When she returned, I had a bowl of lotus seed soup and a cup of calming tea waiting for her. Her husband had instructed me on all these things. I had learned a lot about her dietary preferences on the journey. Sterling. The dishes today, though, from the capital, are too extravagant and not to my taste. Her husband had already taken her cloak. She came in from outside, looking a little tired. They were setting sail in a few days. A candle sputtered, and the room was silent. She took my hand. "Olivia, are you sure you want to come with us? The sea is a harsh place. You and your husband have given me a new life, and the wonders of the foreign lands you spoke of. I wish to see them for myself." He put down his bowl and massaged her temples. "You have worked hard today, my lady." They were so natural, not at all awkward with me. An outsider, present. He was in poor health and she, Lady Sterling, would often navigate the world of the powerful dealing with the noble ladies. She had grown used to it. After the prefect's banquet came the plum blossom viewing. She had only just returned to the manor for a moment of peace. "The lotus seed soup is delicious," she said, her eyes sparkling. She was a full 10 years younger than me, and deeply in love with her husband. She was the daughter of a marquis, a tigress from a military family, and she had followed her husband to the port. When I was sold to the Preston family, I had happened to meet them as they were passing through Yu County. Seeing my predicament, she had jumped down from her horse and bought me. To prevent any trouble, we had signed a death pact contract. But my mother-in-law was still alive then, and I was still attached to Ethan. I had begged for a reprieve, and she had agreed without a second thought. I was eternally grateful. My mother-in-law, seeing the tall horses, had looked at her with venomous eyes and spat. "You've spent so much money on this worthless baggage. You'd better be careful. So young, and already barren, it must be a curse." Her words were cruel. I couldn't help but retort, "If you offend a noble, I won't be able to protect you. Then we'll just have to have my husband come back and collect our bodies." Only then did she back down, but the woman had just laughed. "In my eyes, a woman is not worthless baggage. She is my person. You will not beat her or scold her. Otherwise, you will return the money." Of course, my mother-in-law would not agree. The woman had stamped the contract and said to me solemnly, "When you have made up your mind, I will come for you." At that time I had made a mental note but didn't think much of it. How shallow I was. She spoke of the terrifying waves of the sea, of ships capsizing, of the constant danger. I only felt a pang of sympathy for her. She turned and called me, "Olivia, I want to eat roast goose tomorrow." The dead leaves rustled. Looking at the moon, my heart was filled with a boundless tenderness. "Yes, my lady, I will make it tomorrow." The honey-colored roast duck, glistening with fat, fresh from the oven, was a tempting sight. The wood here gave it a unique flavor. The stove was not what I was used to, so the heat was a little off. But she was very pleased and gave me a day off. Olivia's cooking is better than the palace chef's. She was a straightforward person, and I believed her. I had learned to cook from my mother, and I knew how to handle all sorts of ingredients. After the flower festival, I had started cooking for others. The few families in the capital were my mother's old clients. I had slowly saved up the money to come back. I had also learned many new dishes. The roast goose, a favorite of the Marquise's household, I had learned from a cook I knew. I had come back and started selling tofu to wait for her. I was afraid she wouldn't be able to find me. In my sachet was a shell, rough and crystalline. When I held it to my ear, I could hear the sound of the wind. She had given it to me as a parting gift, telling me of the sea, of foreign lands. The light in her eyes outshone any pearl. I stood by the sea, watching the merchant ships with their sails unfurled. The port was bustling with fishmongers. The salty wind blew away the shadows in my heart. The place we were going, no one had ever reached before. The dangers were unknown. There were several hundred of us. Besides the sailors and helmsmen, there were also alchemists, physicians, and a few old women. I had been keeping an eye on her husband. He seemed accustomed to life at sea. A few days later, it was she who fell ill. She was wrapped in her quilt, drenched in sweat, her face ashen. The sea was not as calm as it looked. Her husband was heartbroken, able to only give her a simple rice porridge. "My lady, I have burdened you." He was carrying out the late emperor's will. The sea was rich in resources. A long voyage could bring back more resources and many new and strange things at night. She asked me to stay with her. She had lost a lot of weight. She rested her head on my lap and called me Big Sister. I had never seen her like this. I later learned that her own sister had died in childbirth. They had been very close. I took a pickled plum from a jar. It helped to ease the nausea. "With you here, Olivia, I feel at ease." She nuzzled against me. Most of the time at sea, we were alone. Her husband would take inventory of the cargo and organize his documents. He spent most of his time in his cabin, writing and drawing. After she recovered, she would patrol the ship with her guards. The sea was vast, and they had to be wary of pirates. I would also help the old women mend the sailors' clothes, a knot for each day. On the 60th day at sea, we were attacked by pirates. Several ships surrounded us. They were fast and nimble, and they threw grappling hooks onto our ship. I had heard that pirates were ruthless, that they were monsters from the sea. From their dress and their strange language, my heart was in my throat. Her husband took me back to the cabin. She went forward with her spear. The sea was churning, and the waves crashed against the ship. She was pushed back several times. Seeing it was a woman, the pirates sneered. Their leader, a man with a sword, stood at the bow of his ship, the blade gleaming in the sun. Her husband, holding a book, comforted me. "Don't worry, my wife is a peerless warrior." I could clearly hear the tremor in his voice. Through the window, I saw her emerge from the crowd, her steps firm. The pirate leader seemed to hesitate. This was her chance. Her pear-blossom spear sent his arm flying, a shower of hot sparks. The rest of the pirates fled in terror. We had lost some cargo and a few men. She was exhausted. I threw down my sword and rushed to support her. After a while, all the chickens, ducks, and pigs we had brought were gone. The cured meat, though not as good as fresh, was the best we had. I had observed how the wives of sailors preserved food for their husbands. Their methods were more refined than the rough ways of the ship. I was in charge of her meals. The journey was long and dangerous, and most of the cooks from the capital were unwilling to come. At night, her husband and she would stand at the bow of the ship, the moon and stars reflected in the water. I realized I hadn't thought of County of Ethan in a long time. He would use the stars and his wooden board to calculate their direction and distance, a method called celestial navigation. He taught me patiently. I was mesmerized, but a part of me was hesitant. Everything was bathed in an ethereal glow in the dark. The sea belongs to everyone. If you learn, Olivia, you too can sail the seas. Her voice was seductive. I committed it to memory. You are right, my lady. Beside me stood Julian. He had been appointed from the court of state ceremonial, and was fluent in several languages. He could read and write those strange tadpole-like characters. Though the kingdom of Maru is small, they have always been courteous in their dealings with our court. The pirates are rampant. You are truly a heroine, my lady, I agreed. Life at sea was monotonous. I had grown close to Julian. He taught me foreign languages and customs. When I cooked, I would always make an extra portion for him. One day, we docked. Her husband and his entourage went into the city for a few days. We had to stay near the ship. The people here were blonde and blue-eyed. From a distance, we could see their soldiers, all armed with firearms. Our goods were exchanged for gold, a bustling market. Her husband's business was done, and we prepared to set sail again. The people on the ship had also bought many things. I had bought many spices and could make new dishes. They were also interested in the food we had brought, but were hesitant to try. For the first time in my life, a stranger kissed the back of my hand. She drank the tea we had brought, her eyes sparkling as she looked at me. Are you pleased with the wonders of this foreign land, Olivia? I could die happy, I said. My heart pounding. I was not lying. The return journey was not peaceful. The sea was rough. By the time we reached the capital, it was late summer. Her husband's health had given out, and he fell gravely ill. All the doctors in the capital came to see him. The illness was from birth, a severe deficiency. He needed to rest, but he still had to deal with official matters. She grew thinner every day. He was awake for shorter and shorter periods. The capital was abuzz with rumors. Mr. Sterling had colluded with foreign powers and was plotting a rebellion. It was a grave crime. I was cornered in an alley while out shopping. Mr. Sterling is not that kind of person. They threw vegetable leaves and manure at me before they were satisfied. Finally, one of them said, with some uncertainty, "She is just a maid. What does she know? She is just defending him. It is useless. A dog of the Zhao family is no good either." Another spat. I wiped my face and went back to the manor. The manor was in chaos. Soldiers had come and gone. When I entered the courtyard, she was sitting on the floor, clutching a book, her eyes red. Olivia, Sterling, has been arrested. The officials had taken all his books and maps. I looked at her, my nose tingling. She was such a good person, Olivia. I cannot let him be slandered. I promised to protect him for the rest of my life. You saw it too. They have gunpowder. Their weapons are better than ours. Without ships, we are just waiting to die. The path Sterling forged with his life cannot be broken. She was taken back to the Marquise's manor and placed under house arrest. No one paid any attention to me. I knelt outside the manor gate saying that I was returning to my hometown and might never see her again, and that I had come to say goodbye. I had inquired. The old matriarch of the Marquise's household was a kind woman. Hearing that I was her maid, and out of respect for her old master, she allowed me to see her. You are a thoughtful child to be so concerned for Lewin. Although I could not leave the manor, they still cared for their daughter. Her room was filled with all sorts of drawings. When she saw me, she gave a bitter smile, her eyes no longer bright. Olivia, you don't have to worry about us. You can leave. I am sorry to have involved you in this. She said she was sorry. My heart sank. I took her hand and looked into her eyes. My lady, your husband is still in prison. You cannot give up. I will. You said the sea route cannot be broken. Will you trust me one more time? I knew how difficult it was for a noble lady like her to come out and wield a spear, to sail the seas. It was much harder for her than for me. I could not let her hope die. She squeezed my hand, her tear-filled eyes suddenly shining. Olivia, you can still help me. From the scattered drawings, she found the firearm designs she had brought back from the foreign land, modified and improved. My lady, wait for me. I clutched the drawings, but I knew the time was not right. On my way back, I ran into Ethan's sedan chair. He got out and stopped me, his face unnatural. What happened then? We all had our difficulties. I didn't know my mother had forced you to marry. Now that the Zhao family is finished, are you still unwilling to come back? He was asking me personally. I should have been grateful. But before he could, Isabella had already found me. She had borne him a daughter and was pregnant with a son. When she heard of the Zhao family's troubles, she was afraid he would soften. "If you dare to come back, I will break your legs." I stopped her raised hand and reminded her. "Don't forget, my lady, this is the capital, not far from the bamboo garden." She panicked, unable to break free. I was used to hard labor and was strong. And these days, I had been trained by her. Her eyes were filled with terror. She had disguised herself as a man and entered the academy, where she had had an affair with Ethan. The scandal had been the talk of the town. In the end, they had to have a shotgun wedding. It had only been a year. If any of the well-connected people recognized her, she would be mocked. She made me swear I would not pester Ethan again. I told her I was going to sea. She hesitated, then let me go. Now, Ethan, unaware of this, was still trying to persuade me. Going to sea is a waste of resources. That path is not to be taken. It is a journey of no return. You'll die without even a proper burial. Don't be so stubborn. Just because you've been to sea once, do you think you, Olivia, are no longer a she? It seemed he was also one of the officials who had impeached them. I walked past him without a second glance. "Thank you for your concern, my lord. Even if I die, I will be a ghost of another family." On the day I left the capital, Julian came to see me off, dressed in his official robes. "In a hurry, Olivia, take care. I can only see you this far." Mr. Sterling had high hopes for me, but I have failed him. He looked at me with a bitter smile. In his official position, he was not his own master. He handed me a book from his sleeve, a logbook. This was left by generations of sailors. Mr. Sterling stayed up all night organizing it. It was supposed to be a treasure for the court, but it became a tool for his conviction. I hope it will be of some help. From him, I learned that the emperor, swayed by rumors, had declared that sea travel was a waste of resources and a menace, and had ordered a ban on all sea travel and the destruction of all ships. I looked at him with gratitude. Thank you. In the past, when I mended clothes for the sailors on the ship, I could sense their hardship. For people who lived by the sea, if their livelihood was gone, they could not feed their families. The first priority was to have the emperor lift the ban. I used the money I had left to hire 2 large ships at the shipyard. Lady Sterling entrusted me with the rest of her money and her most trusted men. Before the sea winds began to blow, I was ready. My mother-in-law used to pray to the gods, seeing the songs of the larks and magpies as good omens, believing her son would become the top scholar. So, the emperor, who had been seeking immortality for years, would also receive a good omen. It was rumored that a divine Qilin from a celestial mountain at sea had ridden the wind to the capital. To obtain it would bring prosperity and longevity to the nation. Lady Sterling had seen it, the translator from the court of state ceremonial had seen it, and the people were petitioning for it. The emperor, unable to resist, relented. My travels had taught me what various countries lacked, and with her husband's logbook, I found a trading company and formed an alliance. While everyone else was still preparing, we had already set sail. With her husband and her in front, I was confident about the Qilin. The advantage was mine. The stars were high. I stood at the bow of the ship, remembering how she had fought off the pirates. If they came, we were prepared, but I did not let my guard down. A month later, I finally reached the kingdom of Ma Lin. After she had killed the pirate once, the story of a female warrior had spread across the seas. They were no longer surprised to see me. They were only surprised to hear me speak their language. They were fascinated by the distant land and traded a Qilin for the things we had brought. The Qilin was a strange creature, like a deer but not a deer, with a spiritual air about it. On the return journey, we missed the favorable winds and were delayed by half a month. I was frantic, hoping her husband could hold on in prison. The ambassador from Ma, with the Qilin, had already gone to the capital and presented the firearm designs. The charge of rebellion was cleared. To display his virtue, the emperor was overjoyed and built a garden for the Qilin. The profits from the trading company were used to expand the orphanage. The sea was cruel, and there were many orphans and elderly. As she had said, the sea belonged to everyone. The sea routes were open again, and countless treasures flowed in. The emperor had gotten a taste of it. She was released. Olivia, I owe you everything. My lady, it was you who taught me that a woman can be independent, that she can ride the wind and waves. Without you, there would be no me, and there would be no today. She was in tears, her cheeks gaunt, but she smiled sincerely. The matriarch of the Marquise's household saw her out and patted my hand. Good child, go. We went to get her husband together. He was a skeleton when he came out of prison, his skin translucent from the darkness. I almost didn't recognize him. The sun was bright, and he was unsteady on his feet. A hand firmly supported him. I looked up. It was Julian. Miss, you are back. He brought gifts and returned to the manor with us. The various dishes on the table were a reunion of sorts. Everything seemed to have gone back to that summer. The emperor did not survive that summer. He passed away after a heavy rain. A new emperor ascended the throne. The sea routes were open and taller, wider ships were built in the shipyards. Her husband's heart was finally at ease. After 2 years with his wife and daughter, he passed away. The lotus pond in the courtyard rippled. Sitting on the porch, I was surprised to find a white hare. She, with her people, embarked on a new voyage. I was her second in command. On one of our return journeys, I saw Ethan in a coastal town. He was listless and old, having offended a political rival and been demoted to a local magistrate. I heard Isabella's son had died young, and she had stayed in the capital with her daughter. Everyone said it was karma for abandoning his wife and child. But I knew he was not resigned. Unlike the officials at court who argued against the dangers of the sea, he had a personal stake in it. His eyes gleamed with a green light. The rest of his days would be spent with the rocks and the waves, a constant reminder of his failure, a slow, agonizing death. The tall mast, the sails cutting through the sky, all this was a gift to me. I couldn't help but think, if I hadn't met them, would I have been worn down to death? Or would I have withered away in the inner court? Or would I have just sold tofu for the rest of my life? Set sail. A shout pulled me from my thoughts. Life is like sailing in the dark. In the end, you will see the light.